The morning sun filtered through the bamboo, casting long, trembling shadows across the clearing. Hero knelt on the damp earth, his chest rising and falling unevenly, his mind a storm of restless thoughts. Each distraction, from the distant crow's cry to the flicker of sunlight on the leaves, seemed magnified, pulling him further from the quiet he desperately sought. The world beyond this secluded grove was noisy, chaotic, filled with demands, failures, and incessant comparison. And within him, the turbulence mirrored the outside, ambition clashing with doubt, desire struggling against fear. The mentor stood silently nearby, a figure carved in patience and presence, eyes as steady as granite cliffs. He observed Hero with neither judgment nor expectation, allowing the young warrior to face the tumult of his own mind. "Focus," he said finally, voice calm but commanding, "is not found in the world. It is forged from the self. You cannot conquer what you do not understand within." Hero's first lesson began not with the sword or stance, but with the journal laid before him. Words became mirrors, reflecting not just his intentions, but the subtle patterns of distraction that governed his life. Each entry forced confrontation, idle thoughts, unspoken fears, the relentless chase of recognition. Emotionally, he felt frustration rising like a storm tide, the temptation to abandon the exercise almost irresistible. Yet, something deeper stirred, a quiet recognition that the turbulence itself contained the seeds of clarity. Meditation followed. Hero sat with crossed legs on the cold stone floor of the dojo, focusing on the rhythm of his breath, the rise and fall of his chest, the weight of his hands on his knees. Thoughts surfaced, as they always did, unfinished tasks, imagined failures, comparisons to peers. The mind rebelled, but the mentor's presence acted as gravity, anchoring him. Each inhalation a tether, each exhalation a release. Slowly, the chaos began to compress into discernible patterns. Hero noticed the impulsive reactions, the wandering attention, and, most importantly, the moments where his ego dictated action rather than deliberate intention. Small routines became his scaffolding. The daily sweeping of the dojo, the measured placement of weapons, the precise alignment of practice mats, all were acts of grounding, tiny rituals that drew scattered energy into cohesive purpose. Physically, his body began to mirror the nascent discipline of his mind. Movements more deliberate, stances held with subtle steadiness, even his gait carrying a trace of inner alignment. Emotionally, the surge of frustration ebbed into a steady current of awareness. The turning point arrived unexpectedly during a test of endurance. The mentor had instructed him to maintain a precise kata through exhaustion, a series of fluid movements requiring concentration, timing, and subtle control. Halfway through, fatigue clawed at him, and his mind screamed to abandon the exercise, to yield to comfort. Hiro's chest tightened, sweat stinging his eyes, legs trembling. But for the first time, he resisted. He paused, inhaled deeply, acknowledged the pull of impulse, and chose awareness over reaction. In that deliberate act of refusal, the first shard of samurai wisdom crystallized. Mastery begins within. Before confronting the chaos of the world outside, one must confront the chaos of the self. Hero felt a subtle shift, like the quiet settling of dust after a storm. The fractured mind had not vanished, but the fracture was now a guide, revealing where focus and discipline must be applied. The mentor's eyes softened, a shadow of approval passing across his ancient features. "To wield power outside," he intoned, You must first still the storm inside. Hero rose, chest heaving, gaze steady. The first step on the path of relentless focus had been taken. The journey toward presence, mental fortitude, and unshakable clarity had begun. Each moment now an opportunity to forge the mind as fiercely as the sword. Next, Hero will learn how silence itself becomes a sharpening stone, transforming distraction into deliberate awareness. The forest outside seemed to breathe with Hero, each leaf and twig attuning to the rhythm of his awareness. The mentor's presence, though silent, was a constant pulse beneath his consciousness, a steady reminder that observation itself could become a teacher. Hero began to notice patterns. The twitch of a distracted hand, the fleeting glance toward imagined failure, the way his mind sought comfort over challenge. These were not flaws to punish, but signals, signposts indicating where attention must settle, where energy must be harnessed. Each morning he returned to his journal, recording not only actions and thoughts, but also the subtle responses of body and mind. He noted how fear surfaced as a quiver in his chest, how impatience tugged at his shoulders, how desire pulled his gaze outward. In doing so, he learned that awareness was itself a tool, a scalpel to dissect the inner battlefield. Emotionally, he became less reactive, mentally more discerning, physically more grounded. The chaos had not disappeared, but it now existed as a map rather than a maze. Hero's training incorporated small rituals, deceptively simple yet profoundly anchoring. Lighting incense before practice, arranging weapons with exacting precision, walking the dojo's perimeter in measured steps. Each act sharpened attention, demanding presence. The repetition embedded a rhythm into his being, a tempo that synchronized mind, body, and spirit. Distraction lost its dominance. Impulses could be acknowledged without yielding. The fractured mind was no longer a tyrant, but a student under careful guidance. A final challenge that week tested all he had learned. The mentor instructed him to perform the full sequence of forms under an imagined assault, strikes and distractions inserted at unpredictable intervals. Each intrusion threatened to pull him back into chaos. But Hero, for the first time, responded not with reaction, but with deliberate observation. His breath remained steady, movements precise, eyes aware, yet calm. Every thought of surrender was noted and released, every surge of doubt met with the anchor of presence. When the exercise concluded, Hero sank to the mat, chest heaving but mind clear. The mentor approached, nodding slightly. "See now," he said, "the battle is not with the world, nor with others, but with the mind itself. Conquer this, and you hold the key to all that follows." Hero understood. The first lesson of the hidden samurai ritual was complete. The fractured mind, once a source of distraction and weakness, had been transformed into the foundation of relentless focus. Awareness, discipline, and deliberate action had begun to shape his consciousness, preparing him for the trials that awaited. The next stage awaits. Hero will discover how silence, once feared as emptiness, becomes the sharpening stone of unwavering focus. The mountains were silent, yet alive. Mist clung to the pines, softening the contours of the world, while a thin veil of fog carried the scent of damp earth and cold stone. Hero stood alone on the ridge, the morning sun a pale glow behind clouds, and felt the weight of absence pressing against his mind. No birdsong, no chatter of wind through leaves, nothing but the quiet stretching endlessly, demanding his attention. At first, it unnerved him. The silence felt like a mirror, reflecting every restless thought, every unresolved fear. Without distraction, his mind, untrained in stillness, amplified doubt. Every insecurity rose like smoke, curling through his consciousness, testing his patience, tempting retreat. The mentor observed from a few steps away, seated cross-legged on a weathered stone, eyes closed, unmoved. His calm was palpable, as if the world itself deferred to him. He spoke, finally, voice low, carrying authority tempered by quiet. Silence is not absence, hero. It is the sharpening stone. Only here, in stillness, do we see the edges of the mind clearly. Hero exhaled slowly and began the first exercise, walking the ridge in deliberate steps, noticing each footfall, each shift in balance, each heartbeat. The act of attending to the present, without haste or judgment, was exhausting. Thoughts intruded constantly, urging him to rush, to check his surroundings, to imagine the completion of the day. Yet he pressed on. Step by step, breath by breath, he discovered the paradox. Stillness magnified perception. Details he had ignored, tiny movements in the mist, distant sounds of water, the subtle sway of branches, became vivid. Each moment demanded presence. Each observation demanded clarity. By mid-morning, Hero sat beside a quiet stream, observing the gentle flow over smooth stones. The rhythm of the water mirrored his own breathing, a cadence that began to calm the storm within. The mentor spoke again. Focus is cultivated here. In silence, attention becomes intentional. In observation, the mind finds its discipline. A samurai without presence is a blade without an edge. Hero closed his eyes, allowing the quiet to settle. He noted the rise and fall of tension in his chest, the flurry of scattered impulses, the habitual clinging to thoughts of what-ifs and should-haves. In this emptiness, he realized, he was confronting himself in the purest form. Fear was present, not as danger, but as a teacher, highlighting where his awareness faltered. Ego, too, surfaced quietly. The desire to appear composed, to impress the unseen, to succeed without struggle. The silence stripped everything away, leaving only raw consciousness. It was a small breakthrough, yet profound. The first crack appeared in the fortress of distraction. Hero's mind, though not yet fully disciplined, had glimpsed the power of stillness. A tool to sharpen perception, a foundation for precise action, and a weapon against the chaos of thought. Emotionally, he felt calm seep in, a quiet clarity washing over the turmoil. Physically, his body moved with newfound deliberation, each gesture measured, each posture aligned. The invisible chain of scattered energy loosened, offering a taste of control previously unknown. The mentor finally rose and motioned toward the valley below. "Tomorrow," he said, "you will be tested, not by strength nor by speed, but by the mind. You must endure a strike you cannot anticipate, respond with observation alone. Only then will you see the true edge that silence offers." Hiro nodded, the weight of anticipation grounding him. In the stillness, he sensed that focus was no longer a distant concept. It was a force being forged, tempered like steel, in the quiet crucible of discipline. The next step awaits. Hiro will embrace the rigor of ritual, learning how repeated, disciplined action hardens the mind into unwavering focus. Dawn broke the next day, with a fragile silver light that spilled across the ridge. Hiro's body, stiff from yesterday's long vigil in stillness, felt every tendon and joint, a reminder of the discipline required to align mind and body. The mentor led him to a narrow path winding through jagged stones, where the fog pressed close and obscured all but a few feet ahead. "Today," the Kenzie said, "you will learn to let silence guide your action. Observe. Wait. Respond only when the moment demands it. Let the world reveal itself to you without interference." Hero nodded, breath steady, muscles tense yet alert. The path was treacherous, each misstep risking a fall. But it was not the terrain that would test him. It was the sudden, unpredictable strikes from the mentor. Hidden among the fog, the Kenzie would move with the swiftness of thought, forcing Hero to react with observation alone. At first, the attacks startled him. Impulses surged, demanding action before comprehension. Every strike he failed to anticipate echoed in his mind as failure, fueling frustration. But the silence remained, unwavering. Hero forced himself to pause, to breathe, to truly observe the subtle cues, the shift of weight in the mist, the barely audible rustle of clothing against stone, the tilt of a wrist or knee. Slowly, understanding emerged. The mind, once fractured by distraction, began to synchronize with the rhythm of the environment. Each movement became intentional, each decision calculated yet instinctive. Hero realized that silence was not a passive state. It was an active, living awareness, a sharpened instrument that honed perception and magnified every sensory input. Hours passed in this rigorous dance of observation. Fatigue pressed against him, yet every successful anticipation strengthened resolve. Emotionally, panic gave way to calm. Mentally, doubt softened into clarity. Physically, reflex became fluid, precise, disciplined. When the final simulated strike landed, Hero had already read it before it arrived, moving with a calm inevitability that astonished even the mentor. The ridge itself seemed to acknowledge his transformation, the mist parting, the first rays of sun illuminating his stance, the quiet resonance of the forest echoing the stillness within. The mentor stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on Hero's shoulder. "You see now," he said, voice gentle but commanding. "Silence is not emptiness. It is the sharpening stone. Every thought left unchecked, every impulse acted upon without observation, dulls the mind. But in stillness, in deliberate attention, focus becomes a weapon. The world may rage, the mind may scatter, but the disciplined observer acts with clarity, precision, and relentless intention." Haru absorbed the lesson, heart steady, mind alert, body attuned. The quiet had revealed more than perception. It had unveiled the capacity to control energy, attention, and action simultaneously. In this paradox, he recognized the truth of the hidden samurai ritual. Focus is not a skill to acquire casually. It is forged in silence, tempered by discipline and sharpened through vigilant observation. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows over the ridge, Hero sat quietly, eyes closed, breathing in the harmony of awareness and action. The weapon of silence had been grasped, but he knew the path was far from complete. Next, he would be tested by repetition, ritual, and the crucible of discipline, where the mind and body would be honed into unbreakable instruments of focus. From stillness emerges precision. From repetition emerges mastery. Hero now steps into the crucible of ritual, where relentless discipline will forge his mind into a blade of unwavering clarity. The morning sun had barely pierced the horizon when Hero rose, muscles protesting, spirit unsettled yet attentive. The ridge was silent, save for the occasional caw of a distant bird and the whisper of wind through the pines. The mentor stood a few steps away, watching, as if measuring the weight of Hero's resolve. "Discipline," he said softly, "is not punishment. It is the crucible in which a focus is forged and the spirit hardened. Today, you will learn to honor the ritual, to find in repetition the strength to command yourself." Hero followed the Kenzie into the clearing, where the first task awaited. A series of kata, ancient forms passed down through generations of warriors. Each movement required precision, intention, and alignment of body, breath, and mind. At first, fatigue overpowered him. His legs trembled, arms ached, and his mind begged for distraction. The desire to rush through, to finish, to escape, pressed against every fiber of his being. But the mentor's gaze never wavered, and Hero felt the silent pressure of expectation. With a deep inhale, Hero grounded himself. The ritual demanded full presence. The swing of the arms, the pivot of the feet, the subtle shift of weight, not as isolated actions, but as a unified flow. Each repetition became a meditation in motion, a bridge between mind and body. Emotionally, the initial frustration melted into steady resolve. Mentally, chaos became order. Physically, the body adapted to the rhythm of disciplined practice. The monotony that had seemed unbearable transformed into a mirror, reflecting his inner state with brutal honesty. After the kata, the training intensified. Dawn turned to mid-morning, yet the mentor pushed Hero through endurance drills, carrying weighted implements across uneven terrain, sprinting up slopes until lungs burned, and holding stances long enough for the mind to scream for release. Pain, exhaustion, and temptation to quit became constant companions. But the mentor's voice, calm and unwavering, reminded him, "Discomfort is your teacher. Repetition is your forge. Weakness is refined into strength when you honor the system." Hero began to notice subtle shifts. Movements that were once awkward became fluid. Mental chatter faded into a background hum. Every breath anchored his energy. Every step reaffirmed intention. The ritual was not merely a set of exercises. It was a framework, an ancient system designed to transform scattered energy into singular purpose. With each repeated form, with each grueling step, the discipline of ritual carved away distraction, ego, and doubt. By midday, Hero stood drenched in sweat, body trembling, but unbroken. He understood, in a visceral way, the paradox of ritual. What initially seemed constraining and harsh now offered liberation. Discipline was not a burden. It was the vehicle through which focus became tangible, through which the mind could align with the body, and through which the spirit could awaken. The mentor's eyes softened, sensing the subtle transformation beginning to take hold. Through repetition and ritual, scattered energy is channeled. Through relentless practice, the mind sharpens and the body obeys. Hero now steps deeper into the crucible, where endurance and precision will sculpt focus into an unyielding force. The storm came without warning. Dark clouds rolled over the mountains, rain lashing against the trees, wind bending the pines like reeds. Most would have sought shelter, but Hero understood that the ritual was now testing him beyond comfort. The mentor's calm voice echoed over the storm. The mind wavers under ease. It is under pressure that focus is revealed. Move through the storm as you would move through life, deliberate, aware, unshaken. Hero gritted his teeth, muscles screaming, and began the forms anew. Each step was an act of will. The cold rain stung his skin, soaked his garments, and slowed his movements. But he forced precision with every strike, every pivot, every stance. He could feel his mind attempting to fracture. Memories, doubts, the temptation to quit. But he breathed, observed, and returned. With each repetition, he discovered a strange clarity. Pain no longer dominated, it became a signal, a guide to the boundaries of endurance and attention. The mentor introduced a second layer of ritual, mental exercises integrated with physical exertion. While performing kata in the storm, Hiro recited sequences in his mind, visualizing every movement as though it were happening in perfect, slow-motion detail. The synchronization of thought and body began to sharpen his focus further. Emotionally, he moved beyond frustration into a quiet acceptance. Mentally, distractions lost power. Physically, his motions became both precise and fluid. The storm, once a hindrance, had become a medium through which discipline transformed into clarity. Hours passed. Hiro's vision blurred, muscles quivered, and yet he continued. In that crucible, he realized that mastery was not granted. It was earned, step by grueling step, breath by controlled breath, repetition by relentless repetition. The Kensei's lesson was unequivocal. The ritual was a system, an ancient methodology that channeled scattered energy into unwavering focus. Every motion, every breath, every conscious step was a brick laid in the foundation of mental fortitude. As the storm subsided and the first rays of the sun broke through the clouds, Hiro stood soaked and trembling, yet unbroken. The ritual had revealed its ultimate truth. Discipline is not merely about endurance. It is the alignment of mind, body, and spirit through repetitive, deliberate action. Through ritual, Hiro had learned that scattered thoughts could be anchored, impulsive energy channeled, and inner chaos tamed. The ancient samurai legacy of structured, relentless practice had begun to forge his focus into something tangible, something unstoppable. The mentor placed a steady hand on Hiro's shoulder, his gaze piercing yet approving. "You have glimpsed the power of ritual," he said, "but the path of focus is endless. Only by facing fear, fully and deliberately, can the mind sharpen to its highest potential." With ritual mastered, Hiro now approaches the next crucible. Fear itself, the compass that will reveal the true depth of his focus. The mountains whispered warnings that Hiro could almost hear. Shadows stretched between trees, mist swirled along the ridges, and the forest seemed alive with unseen eyes. The mentor's presence was calm, unshakable, yet his words carried weight. Fear is the map. Where it points, your focus must follow. Run from it, and it controls you. Face it, and it becomes the path. Hiro's heart raced as he stepped into the first trial. A narrow cliffside path slick with rain, wind howling across the precipice. Each step threatened a plunge, each miscalculation the abyss. His mind screamed to retreat, to step back to safety, but the Kensei watched silently, knowing the lesson would be internalized only if Hiro endured. He inhaled sharply, feeling the tremor of fear as a signal rather than a threat. Awareness of the trembling body, the racing heart, and the scattered thoughts became the first step toward control. Next came the simulated ambush. The mentor emerged from behind a tree, wooden practice sword raised, striking with sudden precision. Hiro's instincts screamed to react impulsively, to parry hastily, or dodge without thought. But the lesson was deeper. He paused, observed, and allowed his fear to sharpen perception rather than trigger chaos. Each attack was anticipated, each movement measured. Fear had transformed from enemy to compass. It indicated where attention was required, highlighting blind spots in both mind and body. Isolation deepened the trials. Hero spent hours in silence atop ridges with only the wind and his breath for company. The mind, left unchecked, conjured images of failure, danger, and inadequacy. But the mentor taught him to treat fear as data, not judgment, an emotion to observe, measure, and integrate. With every heartbeat, Hero practiced staying present, using fear as a tool to anchor awareness and refine focus. Emotionally, trembling gave way to steady resolve. Mentally, panic transformed into calculation. Physically, Hero's body moved with deliberate precision, anticipating the next challenge rather than reacting blindly. The forest became a training ground, not just for survival, but for mastery of self under pressure. Each encounter with fear heightened his presence, his clarity, his ability to act decisively, even when adrenaline surged. The final stage of the day's trials brought Hero to a sheer rock face. The climb demanded every ounce of focus he had developed. Handholds were slick, footholds uncertain, and the wind threatened to throw him off balance. Fear pulsed through him, yet he noticed it without judgment, letting it guide careful attention to each movement. With deliberate breaths, calculated steps, and a mind sharpened by ritual, he ascended. At the summit, looking out over the misted valley below, the lesson crystallized. Fear, when embraced and understood, points directly to where focus must reside. With fear as his compass, Hero is ready to confront the final barriers of ego, presence, and mastery. From the summit, Hero felt a quiet pulse of power, as if the mountain itself acknowledged his endurance. The mentor's voice, calm and unhurried, broke the silence. You see now, fear is never the enemy. It is the teacher. Where it resides, your mind must follow. Strength is born in attention, courage in awareness, and mastery in stillness amidst the storm. Hero let the words sink in, feeling how each moment of fear had been a mirror, reflecting his vulnerabilities and unresolved impulses. The mentor then introduced a simulated battle in the heart of the misted forest. Every step, every decision required Hero to remain present. Opponents emerged unpredictably, shadows of doubt threatening to pull him into reflexive action. Yet, with every controlled breath, every measured movement, Hero realized that fear heightened perception, clarified priorities, and honed timing. His mind was no longer a chaotic field of impulses. It had become a precise instrument, tuned to the subtlest vibrations of threat and opportunity. Physically, Hero's body responded with effortless precision. He dodged, parried, and repositioned with fluidity that would have seemed impossible a week ago. The key lay not in strength or speed, but in the fusion of attention and fear. Each tremor of anxiety became a signal, each rapid heartbeat a metronome guiding his awareness. Emotionally, he remained calm, his adrenaline a tool rather than a master. Mentally, clarity reigned. He could see the entire battlefield in detail, predicting actions and adjusting strategies without panic. By the end of the day, the mentor had removed all overt guidance. Hero faced challenges alone, relying entirely on the lessons fear had provided. Heights, sudden attacks, and isolation no longer intimidated him. They directed him. The transformation was subtle yet profound. Fear had become a compass for action, a force that guided focus instead of fracturing it. The once scattered mind now moved with deliberate attention, each thought aligned to purpose, each movement intentional, each breath a tether to the present. As dusk settled over the mountains, Hero understood the ultimate lesson of the day. Fear is not a barrier, but a signal. The hidden samurai ritual had revealed its deeper truth. Mental toughness and relentless focus emerge not from comfort, but from facing and channeling fear into disciplined, intentional action. Hero's inner world, once turbulent and chaotic, now bore the clarity of a sharpened blade. Having harnessed fear as his compass, Hero is ready to confront the final trials of ego, presence, and true mastery. The morning air was crisp, tinged with the scent of pine and frost. Hero knelt at the edge of a quiet river, the sun cresting the distant peaks, casting golden light across rippling waters. He could feel the remnants of the day's trials, the pulse of fear still lingering faintly, but the clarity it had granted was undeniable. The mentor approached silently, his shadow long against the forest floor. "You have learned to see, to breathe, to move with purpose," he said, voice low yet firm. "Now, the final barrier remains, the ego. Pride, impatience, desire for recognition. These are distractions, chains that shatter focus." Hero listened, absorbing the gravity of the moment. Every lesson thus far, the fractured mind, the power of silence, the forging of ritual and the harnessing of fear, had prepared him for this confrontation. But the ego was subtle. Unlike fear, which surged and demanded attention, ego whispered, coaxing action for appearances, for self-glorification, for fleeting satisfaction. It was a thief, stealing the purity of presence, masking awareness behind impulse and vanity. The mentor guided Hero through a series of exercises designed not to test strength, but humility and attentiveness. He performed tasks silently, cleaning the dojo, aligning weapons with meticulous care, observing without judgment. Each repetition was deliberate, a meditation in action. Hero felt the quiet tug of pride, the temptation to hurry, to show skill. But each time he paused, realigning intent with purpose, he felt ego's grip loosen. Meditation followed, a still river of reflection. Hero observed thoughts as they arose, pride, impatience, the desire for recognition, and let them pass without attachment. The mentor explained, "Strength without wisdom is hollow. Power without clarity is fragile. The samurai's mastery lies not in conquest, but in self-command, in the silent harmonization of mind, body, and spirit." Hiro began to feel the convergence of all lessons. The mind sharpened by awareness, presence honed by silence, focus forged through ritual, and fear transmuted into a guiding force. Physically, his movements mirrored this inner alignment. During sword forms, each cut flowed without hesitation or flourish for effect. Emotionally, he felt calm, mentally clear, spiritually aligned. The whisper of ego had been replaced with the hum of presence, the quiet power of someone attuned to both the world and themselves. For the first time, Hiro realized that mastery was not something to display externally. It was a state, an internal equilibrium, a disciplined harmony that guided action without effort or attachment. As the sun climbed higher, the mentor stepped back and gestured toward the practice field. "Today, you will act without ego. Every strike, every movement must be born from focus, not desire. Only then will the hidden samurai ritual reveal its final truth." Hiro prepares for the culminating test, integrating discipline, silence, fear, and humility into fluid, effortless mastery. The field was quiet, the air taut with anticipation. Hiro faced his mentor, weapons laid aside, eyes steady. This was no ordinary duel. It was a test of the inner battlefield. Every instinct urged him to strike, to anticipate, to assert. but he remembered the teachings etched into his consciousness. Ego is distraction. Presence is power. The mentor moved first, a simulated attack, not with force, but with precision meant to provoke reaction. Hero felt the familiar surge of pride. Show your skill, prove yourself. But he allowed it to pass. Breath by breath, he grounded himself, letting each movement arise naturally, without thought of recognition or outcome. His body had become an extension of his mind, trained through ritual, honed by repetition, disciplined through trial. Time seemed to slow. Every motion was deliberate, every step measured. The mentor's feints came and went, yet Hero's responses were neither rushed nor delayed. He was present, fully attuned to the flow of energy around him. Silence became his ally, fear a guidepost rather than a master. With each block, each subtle shift, he witnessed the convergence of all lessons. Focus sharpened, discipline embodied, fear channeled, ego surrendered. The duel reached its climax, not with force, but with stillness. Hero anticipated a final strike, not through brute strength, but by observing the intent behind it. He moved fluidly, positioning himself in harmony with the flow of the encounter. The mentor's blade barely grazed him, yet Hero felt no fear, no pride, no desire for recognition. Only clarity, presence, and mastery remained. After the final movement, silence settled over the field. The mentor's gaze softened, a rare smile touching the corners of his mouth. "You understand now," he said. "Mastery is internal. It is not measured by victory or speed, but by control of mind, body, and spirit. Discipline, ritual, silence, and fear converge into effortless, deliberate action. The ego has been tempered, and presence has become your weapon." Hero stood, the weight of realization settling in. Every trial, every ritual, every moment of fear had prepared him for this synthesis. The hidden samurai ritual had revealed its ultimate truth. Relentless focus is not simply an act of will. It is a life lived in alignment, a mind sharpened, a spirit disciplined, a body in harmony with intent. Hero felt a profound calm, a deep clarity, a sense of unbreakable mental fortitude. With ego mastered and presence perfected, Hero is now ready to walk the path of relentless focus, integrating every lesson into the life he will lead. The morning sun spilled gold across the mountain ridge, illuminating a world still cloaked in mist. Hero stood alone, his posture straight, shoulders relaxed, eyes tracing the horizon. The silence was complete. No birdsong, no rustle of leaves. Only the soft whisper of the wind against the stones beneath his feet. For a moment, he simply breathed, feeling the alignment of body, mind, and spirit that had been so painstakingly forged. The mentor had stepped back, leaving him to navigate life with the wisdom of centuries, distilled into ritual, discipline, and presence. Each trial, each exercise, had been a seed planted deep within him, now taking root. Hero understood that focus was no longer a skill to summon at will. It was the atmosphere in which he existed. The world of distractions, impulsive thoughts, and fleeting desires no longer held dominion over him. He moved through the ridge as he had through the past months, deliberate, attentive, fully present. His mind reflected on the lessons that had guided him here. The fractured impulses, the chaos of thought, had once ruled his every action. Now, through the disciplined repetition of ritual, the patient cultivation of silence, and the careful observation of fear, Hero's mind had become a refined instrument. He understood that distraction was a choice, and attention a cultivated state. Every morning he rose with the dawn. Every evening he reviewed his actions, each moment a chance to refine his clarity. Physical preparedness had become inseparable from mental focus. Even the simple act of walking down the ridge was an exercise in awareness. The feel of stones beneath his feet, the subtle shift of wind against his skin, the distant murmur of the valley below. Each sensation was acknowledged without attachment, each movement purposeful. His body no longer reacted on impulse. It responded with the precision and deliberation born of months of rigorous training. Emotionally, Hero was steady. The rush of impatience, the sting of ego, the lure of distraction, these were not gone, but they no longer controlled him. He observed them as a scientist observes phenomena, without judgment, without fear, without urgency. Clarity arose from this observation. Mental fatigue, once a barrier to focus, was now recognized as a signal for recalibration. Energy was managed, attention allocated consciously, and presence maintained even in the face of challenge. As he descended toward the forest below, Hero sensed the first real tests of integration. The village awaited, full of noise, human urgency, and the unpredictable flow of life. Natural hazards, slippery stones, sudden gusts, uneven ground, posed their subtle threats. And personal trials, the day-to-day frustrations and temptations that had once scattered his energy, now appeared as mere instruments to practice presence. Each obstacle became a mirror, reflecting whether his focus could withstand reality outside the controlled environment of the mountain. The mentor's teachings echoed in his mind. Strength is not fleeting. It is a state of being. Discipline is not punishment. It is liberation. Presence is not stillness. It is action in perfect harmony with intent. Hero's every breath, every footstep, every glance was imbued with the quiet power of these lessons. He had internalized the rhythm of ritual, the precision of attention, the calmness born of fear mastered, and the humility that kept ego in check. Here, at the threshold of the wider world, Hero felt the merging of all the samurai rituals into a living practice. Focus was no longer a practice performed in isolation. It was woven into every decision, every movement, every interaction. The mountain, once a crucible, had imparted its wisdom. Now, the challenge would be to carry that clarity into a world unshaped by ritual, where distractions were relentless and impulses were constant. With the foundation of relentless focus established, Hero is ready to step fully into life, where every moment becomes an opportunity to apply the hidden samurai ritual and embody unwavering clarity. The village below hummed with activity, a world brimming with unpredictability and human chaos. Hero descended from the ridge, each step deliberate, his awareness stretching like a net over everything around him. Children shouted as they ran past, merchants haggled in the marketplace, and the clatter of tools and hooves competed with the wind. In the past, such noise would have fractured his attention, sending him spiraling into irritation or distraction. Today, it was merely background, a river he could navigate without being swept away. Every action was executed with the precision of a blade cutting through air. He observed gestures, expressions, and intentions with calm discernment. A man stumbled nearby, and Hero instinctively shifted, offering steadying support. There was no attachment, no performance for recognition. Presence alone guided his actions. He understood the profound truth the mentor had drilled into him. Focus is not about shutting out the world, but fully engaging with it without losing oneself. His mind was clear, his body aligned, his spirit steady. Unexpected challenges arose. An errant horse bolted through the street, a sudden thunderstorm drenched the market, and a messenger arrived with urgent news. Each disruption tested his equilibrium. Hiro responded without haste or hesitation, prioritizing awareness over reaction, presence over panic. He realized that true focus thrives not in calm or comfort, but in the midst of life's turbulence. The samurai rituals, the silent observation, the disciplined repetition, the harnessing of fear were not merely drills. They were a philosophy for living. Even emotional currents no longer dictated his behavior. Anger, frustration, desire, and doubt appeared as fleeting clouds passing through the vast sky of his mind. Hiro acknowledged them, let them exist, and allowed them to dissipate. He was no longer a slave to impulse. Instead, he acted from a center of unwavering clarity, a space cultivated through months of relentless ritual. Fear became a compass rather than a tyrant. Ego transformed into humility, ensuring that his focus served purpose rather than pride. Hiro paused by the river that cut through the village, its surface reflecting the storm-darkened sky. He knelt, placing his hands on the water, feeling the pulse of movement beneath his fingers. This small ritual, once performed in isolation atop the mountains, now carried the weight of experience. The act of presence in a single moment extended outward, influencing every subsequent choice. Focus had become habitual, an effortless integration of mind, body, and spirit. By evening, Hiro returned to the mountain ridge. He watched the sun sink behind distant peaks, the mist rolling in like a living river. The transformation was evident not only in his actions but in his being. Discipline, silence, ritual, fear, and humility had converged into a unified force, a relentless focus that was both shield and sword. This focus would guide him in all matters, mundane and profound, ensuring that clarity and intention became the standard, not the exception. Hiro understood the final lesson of the hidden samurai ritual. Mastery is not a destination, but a perpetual journey. Each day, each challenge, each moment offered the opportunity to practice presence, refine attention, and act with unyielding discipline. The rituals had forged his mind into a sharp instrument. The trials had tempered his spirit into unbreakable resolve. And as the night settled over the ridge, Hiro knew the truth that the mentor had imparted all along. Relentless focus is not discovered. It is forged moment by moment, choice by choice, in the crucible of disciplined life. The mountain whispered its final approval, and Hiro, standing steadfast at sunrise, embodied the eternal warrior. Clarity unshakable, mind unwavering, and focus relentless.